My dear friends, there are whispers that ride the silence. There are nudges that come not from your thoughts, but from a place beyond thought, a place where light thinks in golden syllables and speaks in the hush between your heartbeats. When the veil between the seen and the unseen grows thin, something holy begins to stir around you. These are not fantasies. They are not dreams conjured by longing minds. No, these are visitations. Visitations from messengers, from watchers, from angels. But how do you know when they've been near? How do you recognize the fingerprints of the divine upon your life? Let me share with you 6 sacred signs. Signs not merely to notice, but to feel. Let them awaken your soul. When the winds of life howl with rage and the foundations you thought were firm begin to tremble, the expectation is that you will fall apart. Chaos comes with a roar, not a whisper. It comes to disorient, to overwhelm, to paralyze the heart, and make logic flee. And yet, some people, perhaps even you, have stood in the middle of that storm with a stillness that does not make sense. There are moments when everything external screams disaster, but internally you are flooded with peace, not complacency, not numbness, but peace that feels as though it has been poured into your bones. That kind of peace is not natural. It is supernatural. It is not a product of positive thinking or a moment of mental strength. It is a signature, a calling card of angelic presence. For when heaven sends its messengers, they do not always come with flaming swords or dazzling light. Often, they come cloaked in calm, carrying serenity in their wings, folding it gently into your spirit when you cannot manufacture it for yourself. Consider the moment when your world felt as if it were collapsing. A diagnosis you didn't expect, a betrayal that cut deep, a silence that stretched too long. In those moments, the human heart should shatter. The psyche should spiral. But something held you. You may not have realized it at the time. You may have thought, I don't know why, but I just felt a strange calm. Or, I should be more afraid, but I'm not. That was not just your mind reacting. That was your soul receiving. The peace you felt in the face of chaos was not coming from inside you. It was being given to you from above. It was as if invisible hands wrapped around your trembling frame, not to remove the storm, but to steady you inside it. Peace in chaos is a divine contradiction. It is an unnatural strength. It defies explanation and ignores the logic of circumstance. When everything tells you that you should be falling apart, but instead you find a stillness that holds you together, it is because heaven has sent help. Angels do not always shout. Sometimes they simply still. And in that stillness, you come to know a deeper truth. You were never truly alone in the trial, even when your eyes saw no one, and your prayers felt like they were hitting the ceiling. Angels were near, gently pressing courage into your chest, weaving divine calm into your mind. That inexplicable peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of the eternal. This is not a rare phenomenon reserved for saints or prophets. You don't have to be perfect to be visited. You don't have to earn the attention of heaven. Sometimes the very chaos you are in is what draws them near. Angels are not repelled by brokenness. They are summoned by it. When your heart breaks open, heaven hears, and often, in response, it sends those who minister peace. The sign is subtle, but powerful. You are calm when you should be crumbling. And in that moment, if you listen closely, if you look with the eyes of the soul, you'll know this calm is not from me. It's from me. It's from them. That divine peace can transform the way you remember your past struggles. What once seemed like luck or a good day begins to look like protection. What felt like strength begins to feel like support. And you realize, maybe I wasn't strong. I was held. Maybe I didn't endure because of my willpower, but because heaven loaned me some of its strength. Angels are not there to eliminate every problem, but to reinforce you. Think of how many decisions in your life were altered because of a small, unexpected shift. A person you met on a day you almost stayed home. A job you got because someone else cancelled, a crisis you avoided without even realizing it. These are not mere fluctuations of fate. These are messages. Every time the impossible lines up perfectly, every time you are in the right place at the right time without explanation, consider the possibility that an angel moved through that moment before you did. Their intervention does not always look miraculous in the traditional sense, but it is no less powerful. They create paths where there were none. They open windows when doors close. They prevent, protect, position, and provide, all while remaining unseen. It takes spiritual maturity to recognize that some of the most important events in your life were not your doing. You were carried, you were placed, you were spared. You begin to listen to the quiet nudges. You walk with a greater sense of expectancy, knowing that your life is not a series of disconnected events, but a masterpiece in progress, one that heaven is actively involved in shaping. So the next time something lines up so perfectly that it stops you in your tracks, do not be too quick to call it luck. Pause, breathe, and in that silence, consider the deeper truth. You may have just walked through the invisible intersection of divine intention and angelic presence. You were not merely lucky, you were led. And those signs, those coincidences that feel too perfect to be chance, may be heaven's way of letting you know that you are seen, you are guided, and above all, you are never walking this life alone. There are moments in life when the weight becomes unbearable, when your soul bends under the pressure of sorrow, and the silence around you feels louder than any scream. These are the times when no one sees your struggle, when your pain is hidden behind polite smiles or buried under the demands of everyday life. You may cry out for help, and yet no reply seems to come. And then, in the stillness of that deep ache, something strange begins to happen. Something that can't be fully explained. You begin to feel a presence, not visible, not audible, but undeniably real. It's as if someone is near, someone who understands without needing words, someone who doesn't judge your tears but honors them. This is not your imagination. This is not mere wishful thinking. It is a sign that angels have drawn close to you. Pain attracts heaven's attention. Not because suffering is holy in itself, but because love cannot ignore it. Just as a mother rushes to comfort a crying child, heaven responds to a broken heart. Angels are not distant observers of human pain. They are sentinels of mercy. They are dispatched to carry the comfort of God into the darkest valleys of human experience. When you hit your lowest point, and yet feel a warmth around you, when your tears fall but your heart suddenly calms, that is a visitation. That is the presence of something, or someone greater than your sorrow. You may have felt this during a sleepless night when grief seemed to swell like a tide inside you, and yet, out of nowhere, peace began to drip slowly into your soul, not enough to erase the pain, but just enough to hold it. That peace was not summoned by your own strength. It was gifted. It was delivered through unseen hands and placed like a blanket over your shivering heart. It was as if someone entered the room without making a sound, someone whose only purpose was to make sure you didn't shatter completely. And you didn't. You made it through that moment. Not because of your own endurance, but because heaven stood beside you, even when you didn't know it. This kind of presence doesn't always come with spectacle. There are no flashes of light or thunderous voices. Instead, it comes as subtle reassurance, the sense that you are not entirely alone, even if logic tells you otherwise. It's that unexpected calm that finds you mid-breakdown. It's the feeling of a hand on your shoulder when no one else is around. It's the voice that whispers inside you, saying, "You will make it through this," when every other voice has gone silent. These experiences are not fiction. They are the invisible realities that anchor so many in their darkest hours. The truth is that angels are drawn to the places where love is needed most. And what is suffering, if not a cry for love? When you are too weak to stand, angels are permitted to carry you. When you are too broken to believe, they believe for you. They come to remind you that your pain has not gone unnoticed, that your silence has been heard, that your soul is still precious, even when you feel worthless. And sometimes their greatest gift is not to fix the problem, but simply to be with you in it, to hold space for your healing to begin. If you've ever gone through something so painful that you thought it would destroy you, but somehow you came out the other side still breathing, then you've already experienced this. If you've ever walked through grief and felt, even for a fleeting moment, like someone was watching over you, then you've already been visited. These moments don't erase the pain, but they mark it with mercy. They transform suffering from something meaningless into something holy. Not because the pain itself is good, but because God refuses to let it be wasted. And angels are part of that redemption. So when you think back on your darkest hours, pay attention to the light that was there, however faint. Remember the warmth that shouldn't have been there, the strength you shouldn't have had. Remember the times when you were at the end of yourself, but someone kept you from falling all the way apart. That was not coincidence. That was a sign. A signal from heaven that help had arrived. That you were not abandoned. That even when no human came to comfort you, you were not left to face the shadows alone. Angels had been with you, quietly, powerfully, holding you when no one else could. Sometimes the universe speaks in echoes. It doesn't shout, it whispers, softly, persistently, and always with purpose. You start to notice things that keep appearing. The same numbers over and over again, the same name coming up in unrelated conversations, the same symbol showing up in your dreams, in passing cars, or on street signs. At first, you dismiss it. You think, it's just my mind playing tricks on me, or that's odd, and then move on. But it doesn't stop. The patterns grow more frequent, more impossible to ignore. That is when something inside you awakens, the quiet realization that you are being spoken to. These are not random repetitions. These are signals, signs, markings from the divine realm. And often, they are left by angels who are trying to get your attention. In the modern world, we are conditioned to overlook the mystical. We're taught to prioritize logic and dismiss intuition. But heaven operates on different frequencies. When angels visit you, they often communicate in symbols because symbols can transcend language, bypass doubt, and land straight in the soul. One of the most common symbolic patterns people report seeing repeatedly is numbers, especially repeating numbers like 111, 222, 333, or 777. To some, they're just digits, but to those attuned to the spiritual, they are messages coded in simplicity. These numbers might appear on a clock, a receipt, a license plate, or even in a dream. They arrive when you need encouragement, warning, or reassurance. They're heaven's way of saying, look here, this moment matters. The same goes for names that come up again and again, perhaps a saint, a loved one, or even the name of a stranger who becomes significant later. It becomes less reactive and more prophetic. That sense of a just knowing grows into a powerful tool for navigating life. You begin to make decisions that surprise even yourself, not because they are based on logic, but because they are based on truth that you can feel, even if you can't yet explain. When angels are guiding you, you begin to operate with a clarity that doesn't originate from your own thoughts. It's as if someone has whispered the right answer into your soul before your mind even catches up. There may be times when you're about to go somewhere and something tells you to wait. Later, you discover why that delay mattered, or perhaps you feel compelled to call someone out of nowhere, and that call arrives just in time to make a difference in their life. These aren't coincidences. They are promptings, subtle cues from the unseen realm. Angels often guide us by strengthening our sensitivity to these impressions. They know that the human soul is designed not just to think, but to listen, to receive. And when we learn to trust those inner promptings, life begins to unfold with more grace and fewer regrets. Intuition guided by angelic influence doesn't lead you into fear or confusion. It brings peace and quiet confidence. Even when it warns you, it does so with a calm authority, not panic. You may feel urged to avoid a situation or person, and though you can't explain why, you know it's right. You may feel pulled toward an opportunity that seems risky, but your heart knows it's yours. This deep alignment between your feelings and your future is not accidental. Angels help you to discern not just what is good, but what is meant for you specifically. They tune your inner compass so that it points not just north, but true. Sometimes this inner clarity grows gradually. Other times it emerges after a crisis, when the usual ways of thinking no longer work. When life breaks you open, you become more receptive. And it is often in those broken places that angels pour wisdom. They don't just rescue, they equip. They teach your soul how to listen, how to sense, how to choose. And the more you honor that inner knowing, the stronger it becomes. It's like a muscle. Use it, and it grows. Ignore it, and it weakens. But once it's been awakened, you can never fully go back to living by logic alone. People may not understand your choices. They may ask why you took a certain path or avoided another, and you might not always have an answer that satisfies them. But deep inside, you'll know. You'll know because peace will follow your steps, even in uncertainty. You'll know because joy will return, even without full clarity. You'll know because the fruit of that choice will confirm that you were led by something higher, and that a something higher, and that a something that was likely not a thing at all, but a someone, an angel, sent to help you remember what your soul already knows. As you continue to grow in this awareness, you'll begin to see that intuition is not just a tool. It's a language, a divine language spoken between your spirit and heaven, a language that grows louder when you're still, when you trust, when you listen. And as you walk through life guided by this inner clarity, you become a vessel not just for wisdom, but for wonder. You begin to live with fewer regrets and more reverence. And in doing so, you walk in alignment with the invisible realm, guided, guarded, and graced by the presence of angels who walk with you, even when you cannot see them. There are seasons in life when everything seems too much to bear, when the burdens you carry threaten to crush your spirit, and the weight of your circumstances feels heavier than anything you've known. You wonder how you will survive the next day, how you will find the strength to keep going when everything inside you feels like giving up. But somehow, without understanding how or why, you do. You take the next breath. You take the next step. You keep going. What you thought would destroy you instead becomes the very thing that refines you. And in the aftermath, as you look back on what you endured, you realize something astonishing. You were stronger than you ever knew. And more than that, you were not alone. The strength that held you up, that carried you through the impossible, was not entirely your own. It was a strength given, a strength imparted, a strength that angels often bring when they are sent to sustain you. When angels visit, they do not always remove the struggle. Their mission is not always to rescue, but to reinforce. They come not to lift the burden off your shoulders, but to place their unseen hands beneath it so that it doesn't crush you. And the evidence of their presence is found not in fireworks or visions, but in survival, in resilience that can't be explained. When you walk through fire and do not burn, when you are surrounded by the flood but do not drown, when every logical outcome says you should be broken, but instead you are stronger, that is the signature of angelic help. Strength in these moments does not always look like boldness. Sometimes it looks like simply getting out of bed when everything inside you screams to stay down. Sometimes it looks like showing up with tears in your eyes, but courage in your heart. Sometimes it looks like forgiving when you've been deeply wounded, or loving when you've been abandoned. It is in these small, unseen victories that true strength lives. And when that strength doesn't make sense, when it comes despite exhaustion, fear, grief, or uncertainty, it is likely that you are being supported by something greater than yourself. Angels are not absent from suffering. They are drawn to it. They appear in times of crisis, of transition, of deep spiritual battle, and though you may not see them, they are often the reason you do not collapse. It is a sacred mystery how we are given just enough to continue, kind to continue. Not always more than enough, not always a flood of joy, but enough. Enough hope to not lose heart, enough peace to not be consumed by anxiety, enough strength to face the unknown. That, unknown, is often the product of heavenly intervention, and it doesn't always feel miraculous at the time. It may feel ordinary, even mechanical, but when you survive what should have destroyed you, when you rise after being knocked down repeatedly, that is not ordinary. That is divine. That is the aftermath of an angel standing beside you in your most vulnerable hour, holding your soul with a strength that was never meant to be yours alone. Angels come to remind you that you are not limited by your own capacity. They serve as a bridge between your weakness and God's power. They remind you that no matter how inadequate you feel, you are never without help. Even when your prayers feel unanswered, they are carrying the strength that was requested. Even when heaven seems silent, they are delivering the strength that has already been dispatched. It may come as a sudden wave of peace when you're on the verge of breaking. It may come as clarity in the middle of confusion. It may come as a stubborn courage that rises out of nowhere and pushes you forward one more time. These are not just emotions. They are reinforcements. They are echoes of the unseen realm reaching into your life. In time, you begin to recognize that your greatest strength came not in times of ease, but in times of hardship. You realize that every time you thought you were finished, you were actually being prepared. That every time you were pressed, something deeper was being awakened within you, and you come to understand that angels were not only sent to protect you from external harm, but to fortify your inner world. They came to remind you of who you are, of the fire you carry, of the calling on your life, of the truth that even in your weakest hour, you are never truly weak. Because the strength you felt, the strength that carried you, that pushed you, that lifted you, was sacred. It was heaven touching earth through you. It was the quiet miracle of angelic presence, turning your pain into power and your endurance into evidence that you were never alone.